welcome to the Bare Necessities. I'm Bear, and today we are making one of my favorite classic desserts. It is tart, it's tangy, they're sweet, just a little crunchy on the bottom, creamy on top. We're making lemon bars, one of my childhood favorite desserts, and also one of my just favorite flavors overall. Y'all know this: cinnamon, vanilla, lemon. Always winners with me. So to get started, let's preheat our ovens to 350 degrees, just like the graphic says. And then for your ingredients, to start with the crust, because we're going to need that first, you're going to need a 9x13 pan or something equivalent with nice sides. I'm just using a casserole, but you can use whatever you have that's about roughly that size. If you have a square pan, I would do about a 10x10. You want it to not have a terribly thick crust, and you want to be able to spread the curd out evenly and not have it too deep because it'll never cook. It'll cook the eggs first inside the curd, and lemon, sweet lemon scrambled eggs. Yum, right? So to get started with ingredients, you need a cup of flour. In here, I have a cup of whole wheat flour. I like the texture that it gives, that nice chewiness from the wheat berries, as well as the flavor itself. Thank you, oven. It just let me know that it is preheated. Yours should be preheating too. Remember, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I believe that's like 180 centigrade. Don't quote me on that. I cannot remember it. So that 1 cup of flour, it can be whatever you have that's equivalent. If you're using coconut flour, I would suggest maybe reducing it ever so slightly, just because the way that coconut flour works, but also toast it up first. 1, the flavor will be amazing, and 2, it'll help it kind of just absorb a little bit better, because you're going to be putting butter in there, and you need it to be able to like shake up and crumble, because you need it to be a sandy texture, which is another reason why I'm using this. But you can use all-purpose flour, whatever you got. Avoid bread, of course. Too much protein in it. It'll be chewy. Yum. Into that, you're going to be adding a 1/4 cup of sugar or whatever sweetener you have. This is monk fruit and allulose. And give that a quick little stir. And later on, for the lemon curd, you need the juice of 4 smaller lemons or 3 really large ones. I used Meyer lemons, and they're very large lemons, and so I only used 3 of them for all the juice that I needed. And I went ahead and zested them. It's not part of the original recipe that I've worked with, but I just really like the zest. It gives a punch. And I'm going to go ahead and put about, let's call it a tablespoon of the zest directly into the crust itself, just to give it that extra bit of flavor, because flavor is important. Let's add it everywhere. We're also going to be adding a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, just a tiny snap of salt, just to give it a little bit of extra oomph. Stir that all in to make sure the zest is broken apart. And then into this, I have 8 tablespoons of melted butter. It's okay. We're not using all of it. We're using 6 of the 8 in the crust. So let's go ahead and get that going. And we need the other 2 for the curd. So we'll just put that to the side for now. And let's get the butter mixed in. You can use room temperature butter. It works just as well. This just happened to be very, very cold, and I forgot to let it come up to room temperature. Plus, it's the end of January, so it's basically summer in Texas. It's really, really warm outside, so the house is kind of on the cool side. And just get all the flour kind of mixed in with the butter and the sweetener, whatever you're using. Try not to use a liquid sweetener if you can avoid it. You can use that in the curd itself, but let's not do that to the crust. You will not enjoy the texture or the cleanup after. And I have gone ahead and sprayed my little casserole so that this won't stick too terribly much. Just gonna continue breaking it up ever so slightly, making sure that it starts to clump together. You want it to be able to hold its shape, but it's also very sandy. That's perfect. So let's get this into our casserole. And we're just going to pour it all out. Let's put that to the side and get it relatively even before you start pressing it. And I like pressing from the center and going out just to make sure it's fairly even, and it gives me a little bit of a lip around the edge. I like edge crust, and it also keeps the lemon curd from possibly sticking to your pan. That way you don't lose anything. You want it all inside the tasty, good, lovely, lovely crust. And for the crust, you don't have to use just flour. You can use graham cracker crumbs. Do whatever you have. Almond flour works really well for it too. You can make that. Cashew flour is okay. It's a little oily, so you need to be careful with that one. But whatever you have, whatever you want to use. If you want to make this more keto, then I would use the nut flours. And the rest of this recipe, the way I'm making it is actually, it's fairly keto friendly. So, but we're not keto in this household. It just happens to be. There we go. Nice and even. So I'm going to get this into my 350 degree preheated oven, and it's going to bake about 12 to 14 minutes, just until it starts to kind of get a little bit golden. And then we're going to let it sit to the side for however long it needs to while we make the curd. So let me just pop this in the oven. I'll be right back. All right, so I've got that in the oven going. It still has a few more minutes, so we're good. And we're gonna get our curd started. For the curd, you're going to need the juice of either 4 medium lemons or 3 very large ones. I have 3 very large lemons, so I used that. I can show you a half of one just to give you an idea. This is half of one of the lemons. So these were enormous, and these had a nice thin skin that was very smooth. These are Meyer lemons. If you can find them, they're sweeter lemon. They grow here in Central Texas and Southern Texas. In fact, we have a Meyer lemon breed for Texas that just thrives here. And so you're gonna need the juice from them. To pick a nice juicy lemon, get one that has a very smooth skin, just like the limes when I described that. A nice smooth skin. You don't want it to have the little endpoints. Those are usually the more fleshy lemons. Try to get some that are just nice and tight, like it looks like it's just a little orb of lemon. With a nice smooth skin, the fewer dimples, the thinner the skin is. And so you can still zest those, and you're not gonna get a whole bunch of pith underneath. That's the white, that's very bitter. You can eat it, you're not gonna like it. And go ahead and just juice those. And if you want, get the zest off first before you juice them, because once they're kind of floppy, that's not easy to do. If you don't have a zester, just use a small knife, kind of peel the zest off. Try not to get too much of the white, and then just chop it up really fine. I mean, you'll have something to chew on, so it'll give a nice texture, and it'll still give amazing, amazing flavor. So there's that. You will also need a cup of whatever sweetener you use. This is a mix of stevia baking, so it's half a cup of stevia baking mix, or the baking style, and then half a cup of my allulose and monk fruit blend that I do, which are just 1 part to 1 part allulose and monk fruit. I also have the zest, the rest of the zest. I have the other 2 tablespoons of butter, and then I have 4 eggs and 2 yolks, and I've gone ahead and already broken them up just so that they are ready to go. But look at the color on those. My husband's coworker raises chickens, so they just run around and eat bugs, and she gives them a little bit of green, but mostly it's just bugs. And their eggs are gorgeous. Absolutely stunning, stunning yolks. You're also going to need a teaspoon of vanilla. That's actually a little bit more than a teaspoon, but again, I love vanilla. And then a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so to get started on the curd, have all your ingredients. You're going to want to take into your pan, whatever you have, use a saucepan. They work really well. If you're using a non-stick one, that's fine. You're just going to need to follow the heat recommendations for that. This is going to be on a medium heat while we're cooking it and then lowered down a little bit. Nonstick usually on the 10 scale need to not go over a 4. That's mostly the suggestions. If you're using steel, use stainless if you have it. Try not to use anything that's like carbon steel or just cast iron. It will eat off. This curd will eat off your seasoning. It'll absolutely remove it from the pan. And 1, that will then be in your lemon curd. And 2, you're gonna have to reseason your pan, adding hours and hours more of work for you on otherwise a fairly simple dessert. So let's just stick to what we know is gonna work. So with the stainless steel, so let's mix our eggs. Just get, and again, this is the 4 eggs with the 2 egg yolks. And you can just use whole eggs. Just do 5. It's fine if you don't want to pull out the yolks. I keep the egg whites because I like steamed eggs in the morning, and the egg whites easier on me. So just get that a little bit more broken up, and we're going to add our sweetener to this, and to get them mixed together fairly well, we want there to be no visible sweetener in there. If you're just using regular sugar, same thing. You're going to want to just stir it until it's all mixed together. There's no lumps or clumps or anything. Like, you'll still see grains, that's fine. Because that'll all go away once we start cooking it, but we don't want any big chunks of sweet. Just makes a mess later. All right. And now we're going to get this onto heat. I'm going to bring this up to a medium heat and let that start warming while stirring it. And while it's starting to heat up, before it's actually hot, I'm gonna go ahead and get my lemon juice. Get that mixed in really, really well. The zest. My salt. Vanilla. And then the last 2 tablespoons of butter from that whole, this has a whole stick of butter in it, y'all. You can use coconut oil or whatever. I just don't like it because it's not great for your heart. Sorry, y'all. It's not. Out of the 2, butter's actually better. You want lower triglycerides? Try lard. Weird, right? So now that we have all of our ingredients in here, let's go ahead and get stirring. You don't have to just babysit it and constantly stir. However, you do not want this egg to get stuck to the bottom because it will start to scramble. Scrambled egg bars. Yeah, not good. Not tasty, tasty food. So you're just going to want to keep it moving a little bit. And make sure it's not sticking to the bottom. And you don't want to get this too hot either. A lot of people use a double boiler, or a bain-marie. That works really well for this. It takes longer, but it goes better because then you have a little bit easier job controlling the heat. Whereas since I'm using induction, I can turn the heat on and off since it's just magnetic. And the thing doesn't get hot, which is cool. But we're going to get this up to temperature, and once it thickens to, think, especially if you're American, Jell-O pudding. But if you have any milk pudding, things like that, think of it that way. The crust is done. You want it to be fairly thick. Not like super hard thick, but set. It just makes it go so much easier later on. And while that heats through, let me grab our crust. Oh, that smells so buttery and delicious. Yum. All right, we're gonna let that just sit over here and cool for 10 minutes or so. Doesn't really have to get too cold. You just don't want it so hot that it will cook the eggs. This is all about keeping the eggs from becoming not tasty. Yes, thank you, oven. It has a 1-minute warning. But we are leaving our oven on, so, because this is gonna go right back in, yay. All right, so this cooked about 5 minutes, and it is thickening nicely. And I forgot to tell you, my crust baked for about 15 minutes. So there's that. And I believe it can probably go up to about 20 before you really have to worry. You just need to bake it long enough that it browns a little bit on the edges because you want it to be set. The quiet of this thing turning off. Okay, just leave that to sit for a minute. Let me grab our crust. Yeah, I can hold my hand onto the crust and it's not terribly hot. So now we just pour our curd in. And if you're worried about cooking the eggs like you may have, you can run this through a strainer. If you're using zest, it's going to strain that out too. But you've got the flavor out of it at this point, so it's really not losing too much. All right, I have a spatula here just so I can keep licking the wire whip over here. And just going to go ahead and get whatever is in there out. You don't want to waste this. Or you could put this on a cookie, on a piece of toast. It's really good with sugar cookies too. And get it nice and even. It's not going to be perfect, but what's my rule? Nothing in the kitchen ever should be. You can eat this curd just by itself, let it cool. It'll set up to a nice thick buttery consistency and just have it as a condiment. You're going to need to keep it in the fridge though. So helpful hint there. And let's get this back in our oven at 350 degrees still. And it's going to bake for an additional 14 to 15 minutes. I'm going to set mine for 14 and then watch it for that last minute if it needs it. What you're looking for is the center to be a little bit set, so when you hit it, it should only have a slight jiggle, and the outer edges are going to be browned. And that's when you know it's ready. And then after that, I'm going to get this, let it cool at room temperature for about 15-20 minutes. And then I will go ahead and get it into my fridge and let it completely chill through for probably 2 to 3 hours. And once it's chilled through, I'll meet y'all back here. Okay, so it's been about 2.5 hours. I'm looking at my refrigerator like it has a clock on it. It does not. It's been about 2.5 hours since these finished baking. They actually ended up taking about 18 minutes just to get firm enough, because what you want, again, is just a little bit of jiggle in the center, but fairly set. Like you can tell that it's not liquid, like it'll still run a little bit because it's just going to be hot while the gelatin then sets up. Gelatin from the eggs, kind of. You just want the edges to be done and just the tiniest bit brown. So that's what you're looking for. Mine got there, and I went ahead and sprinkled some powdered sugar over it just a minute ago. You don't want to do it until it's cool because it'll possibly get some condensation. And I let it sit in the fridge for about 2.5 hours after it finished baking to get nice and chilled and lovely, because I like them cold. Room temperature is fine, but I like them cold. So let's get a little taste. Okay. There we go. It's real life, y'all. All right, so let's give it a taste, shall we? If you look, the custard is really bright yellow for one, but it's just set up in a nice layer. The crust is nice and crispy and crunchy. Oh my God, y'all, that's so good. Woo. And then it hits the back. That is tart. It's a little sweet, just a hint. The crust is so lovely and crumbly, and it's got a little bit of that chew that I described from the wheat berries. It's good, and I'm happy with it. Love how it turned out. Super excited to get to eat the rest of this piece. Not even gonna feel, super guilty about it. Yay, little dessert. You know why I'm not gonna feel guilty? You should never feel guilty about food. There's no such things as guilty pleasures. They're pleasures. Never feel shame, never feel guilt. It's food. But I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to enjoy the heck out of it. And I hope you do too if you try this recipe. See what you come up with. Maybe try lime or lemon lime. That always works. Orange would be cool. It could be interesting. Maybe add a little mint to it. Oh, lovely. But as always, as with everything, make it your own. Enjoy it. Just have fun in the kitchen. I genuinely hope you enjoy making my recipes. I always do. This one, it's a taste of childhood for me. Even though it's still winter here, it's Texas. It's not ever actually winter. So this is a taste of summer, a taste of the fall, a taste of winter for us because citrus comes in toward the cold months. It's all these things blended up together into this lovely, tart, bright flavor. Enjoy. Enjoy the act of making and baking, of experimenting and learning. Test out recipes. They're not always going to turn out perfect. And that's okay. You were trying, and you're learning from them. And until I see you all again, have fun, and bye.